Hello, my name is Colleen Williams, and I am the Texas Sibling Network Project Lead. And I am here today to present on future planning for your loved one with a disability. This workshop is something that we have previously done in person. However, we are recording it to go online in order to allow more people to have access to this really important information about future planning. So the way that this workshop is structured, we have broken it down into 3 separate videos. So this is video number 1, and we have also created a participant guide, which is available on our website. And so in order to get there, you would go to www.disabilitystudies.utexas.edu/TSM. And when you scroll down on the side, you should see future planning webinar for families of people with disabilities. This is where all of our videos will be located, as well as a participant guide. If you want to go ahead and click on that and download it in order to follow along during this workshop, this is where I will reference back to these different worksheets throughout the workshop. So if you want to download or print those off, that will help you as we go along. So in order to start off, we are going to show a short video. We think just really talks a lot about what this training is and why we do it.
In the United States, over 75% of adults with developmental disabilities live at home with their families. Over 25% of these caregivers are age 60 or above. Future planning is crucial to ensuring the security of individuals with disabilities when parents are gone.
Well, the availability of the workshop was brought to my attention back in the summer by a YAI counselor who had been working with Jim for several years and knew that we were interested in these issues, and indeed we are. They are among the most important issues that I think any family similarly situated has to address.
As we as parents, aging parents, now grappling with this very serious question, what's going to happen to my child when I'm gone? Having support in putting that plan into action is absolutely a gift.
As the sibling of an individual with a developmental disability and as someone who works in the disabilities field, I think that future planning is really important because we all want the highest quality of life for our loved ones with developmental disabilities. And in order to think about how that's going to be possible in the future in terms of services and support, plans need to be made and things need to be set in place, and that can often take time.
In my work with families, one of the things that's usually missing is, if I'm talking to a parent and the parent is saying, well, I don't want to worry about the future. My son or daughter is going to, take care of their brother or sister. I'll always ask, well, have you discussed this with your son and daughter? And many times they haven't.
Certainly I learned that one of the barriers is the emotional barrier. You really don't want to think about when you're no longer here. So that's hard. But the other thing is that it just is extremely hard. And to think about your other child having to deal with that is stressful. It's a life-changing responsibility.
I think some of the challenges in our situation were that we hadn't really had a forum in which to talk about our ideas for what the future would be for our family, and this program kind of created a place that we could really have a focused conversation about our options and recognize that we are not in this situation alone.
Being a sibling, it was so wonderful for me to look around the table and see other people, other faces who were living and had been living their whole lives the same or similar experience to what I had been living. And I really can't say enough about how important that was for me.
Another important thing families took away from the workshop was something very concrete, which is called a letter of intent. It's a roadmap which families can take away from the workshop, and it's something that can be revised, modified as needed. And it's really this roadmap of what their loved one would like for their future and how there are certain goals that can make it achievable.
Future planning has opened doors for the individuals and their families.
The professional has always been a part of our lives. And so here they are again, YAI professionals, doing a fabulous job in bringing us all together at one table.
So really just love that video because it shows really great, just kind of intro into what this future planning workshop is about. Like we always kind of say here at TSN, that future planning is more of a marathon, not a sprint. And so the whole basis of this workshop is we want to kind of give you guys an outline so you can run your own marathon. We want to give you guys the tools to be able to talk about future planning and the tools to be able to seek your own resources out, kind of hitting on some main areas of future planning. And hopefully with this, you guys can kind of, as a family, come up with your own plan, because every family's plan is going to look a bit different depending on what they're feeling or what the disability needs and what the individual needs as a family are. So really just really hoping as the Texas Sibling Network to really come alongside families and support them as they figure out what their future planning looks like for their own family. So a little bit about me and about the Texas Sibling Network before we dive in. Like I said, my name is Colleen Williams. I am the Texas Sibling Network Project Lead. I am one of 5 siblings, and my youngest brother, Steven, has a lot of medical and physical disabilities. That's a picture of me and my siblings, including our newest brother-in-law down there in the corner. And when it comes to my family and future planning, it is something that we have only kind of more recently started talking about. My brother is 16, so he's a little bit younger, so I think for a while we just kind of all put it off and, you know, like, oh, he's still young, he's still in high school. But about a year ago, I was presenting at a conference and someone in the, you know, conference raised their hand and said, what about your family's future plan? Like, how do you guys plan as a family for your brother? And I kind of had to sit there and be like, well, we haven't really talked about it as a family. I think there's been a lot of assumptions around it and a lot of assumptions around who would take care of my brother and what his future looked like. But as a family, we hadn't really talked about it. So recently as a family, we've been taking a lot of steps towards future planning. And over Christmas, we all sat down as a family and kind of talked about some of these different aspects, and I've been really working on crafting a letter of intent for my brother. And the letter of intent is kind of the final outcome of this workshop. And so that's something that hopefully at the end of this, you guys will be able to do as a family. And just a little bit about the Texas Sibling Network. The Texas Sibling Network works to support adult siblings of people with disabilities here in Texas. We have different city chapters all over the city. We have one in Austin, Dallas, Houston, Lubbock. We're looking to launch into San Antonio very soon, hopefully. So really, we just work to kind of provide that peer support that we find is really necessary. A lot of times, you know, it's kind of difficult to talk about stuff about your sibling with a disability with friends. They don't always necessarily get it and don't always get all those different dynamics that go into it. They don't always understand some of these lifelong responsibilities and stuff that we have taken on as siblings. And so we provide a lot of support, resource, leadership, and advocacy skill building for siblings. If you want to find out more about us, you can check out our resource guide or just kind of poke around at our website or social media. So recently we actually did some research about tech siblings in Texas through the Texas Sibling Network. And one thing that we focused on was in, future planning. And so I wanted to kind of present some of that data before we kind of dived into some of the more stuff, just because sometimes I think we get the question of, well, you know, do we really need to talk about future planning? And the answer is yes, absolutely. This is just some data that we kind of have to back that up. So we talked about the need for future planning. This was a survey that was done by just over 100 siblings in Texas. And we saw that over 90% of them had some need for future planning. These are some of the barriers that we found out about future planning. Difficulty finding services is kind of the number one, and we kind of hear that a lot. There's not always a ton of services for adult siblings with disabilities. A lot of times we find that there's a lot of services that serve younger children, but the service gap kind of, once you turn 21, there's that service drop-off gap that we see. And especially you see it a lot more even in some of the smaller towns around Texas. Difficulty trusting the system, financial costs, lack of information. Then we do see some, just family disagreements, family not agreeing on what the future looks like. As far as future planning activities that have not been done in families, we see that a lot of times steps for residential placement haven't been taken. This almost 70% of families haven't created this letter of intent, which you guys will kind of have the roadmap to create after this training. You can see that even about 49%, about 50% haven't even discussed plans with the entire family. Which we know that a lot of times it can be there's a mental block behind future planning. It's challenging for parents to admit that they're not always going to be able to take care of their son or daughter. So we know that there really is a huge mental block there, and we really want to work. Really, our goal and hope with this training is to really kind of work through that mental block and to give families the words and the tools to be able to talk about future planning, to be able to think through what their loved one's future looks like. This is just more data showing that about 70% of people with disabilities in Texas live in their parents' home. This matches up with national data. We know that a lot of people with disabilities are living in their parents' home, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we really need to think through what's the long-term goal, especially we know that parents get older, we know that parents can have health problems and parents can pass away, and we need to be prepared and we need to be looking towards what does the future look like, what's the most sustainable future option. We also know that a lot of siblings do anticipate becoming a caregiver. And this is important because I think a lot of times families automatically assume that siblings will become a caregiver, or maybe don't assume and don't want to put it on them. And I think this is just, once again, showing the importance of really talking as a family about what does the future look like? What do I want my future to look like as a sibling, as a parent to someone with a disability, and as a person with a disability? What does my future look like, and what do I want it to look like? And what can I realistically give and do? So usually when we're doing this in person, we have different discussion tables. We have different tables and everyone kind of discusses, and it gives everyone a chance to really see what everyone else is doing and see, well, what has this family done for future planning, and they're like that. So obviously this isn't necessarily something we can do if you're doing this from home, but if you have a couple of moments, maybe either jot down or kind of as a family kind of talk about some of these different questions. If you go to your participant guide, the first 2 pages, there's a mini assessment of future planning. So you just kind of check off as a family and think through, like, what have we done, what haven't we done, just to kind of jolt your memory as we move forward. There's also another worksheet that just kind of talks about some different goals and stuff as a family that you guys might want to kind of set. What are your goals for doing this workshop, and what are you guys hoping to get out of this workshop? Can also kind of just discuss through some of these questions. What steps has your family taken towards future planning? What does your family member with a disability think their future looks like? I think that's pretty important for us to acknowledge, that we need to be including a family member with a disability in all these conversations. In the self-advocacy word, they say nothing for me without me. So definitely make sure that we're including our loved one with a disability in all these conversations. We don't want anything that we're talking about to be a surprise for them, and they know themselves best. So we want them to be included. And then what questions do you hope to have answered through this training? So you can go ahead and pause the video and just kind of jot your answers down to some of these. So our first section in the future planning workshop is building relationships. So each section I start off with a video that kind of gives you a chance to just kind of see some of these principles kind of put into action. And a lot of times it's self-advocates, so people with disabilities talking about how they were able to work on these different aspects of future planning.
Our family, friends, significant others, and supporters create a social network that helps us as we go through life. They also make us happy and help us lead a good life. It is important to grow and strengthen your social networks and relationships throughout your life. The first step in growing your social network is to think about who is in your circle of friends and supporters. Think about how you might want to change that network. Who do you like and trust the most? What do you like to do with your friends and supporters? Who do you want to spend more time with? Is there anyone you don't want to spend as much time with? Do you want to have more friends or people in your life? What kinds of people do you want to meet or get to know better? Your answers to these questions will help you decide how you want to grow or change your social network. You should also work to build skills to navigate social relationships. For some people, making friends comes easy. For others, it is harder.
I made friends through social programs with the park district that we have, which is really nice. They have different art programs, and I've met friends through having the same interests. My family puppy raises leader dogs for the blind, and it gets us out meeting people, and I've made friends that way too.
People do have strong bonds in self-advocacy. Strong bonds really strengthen self-advocacy. People learn from each other, and through that they discover strengths when it comes to speaking up that they were not aware of when they were younger or before they even got involved in self-advocacy. It's the case with me. There were times where I was shy to speak up, and also through what people have seen of me, when I do speak up, they have said, you could do this. I think you can do that. And it's just that kind of interaction within a relationship, like when somebody has confidence in you, it really does play a role in how strong the relationships are between you and that person. Here are some things to consider when building skills to navigate your social relationships. You should know what good and bad relationships look like. For more on this, watch our video on building good relationships. Meet the people around you. Are there people you see but you don't know or talk to at your current activities, work, or school? Find time to talk to them. If you need an introduction, find someone who can help you meet these new people. Talk about friendship fears. Meeting new people can be scary. If you are nervous, talk to people you trust about how to meet new people. Ask for advice from people you trust. Find out from your friends and family members how they make new friends. Learn what works well for them and what is hard for them. Talk with them about what is hard for you when you are trying to make new friends. Brush up on your social skills. Make sure you are interacting with people in socially appropriate ways. Check out online courses like Self-Advocacy Online's Building My Relationships course to learn about good social skills. Always keep trying new activities. You never know what you might like and who you might meet. Strengthening your social network and relationships are important things to help you lead a good life. Remember, think about your social network and how you want to change it. Build friendships and social skills. Try out new activities and interests.
Meet new people at current and new activities. Look for ways to strengthen relationships with people you know.
What makes a good friend is the person you can trust, and a person that you can really rely on and work with each other. It's about teamwork and about the ability to be together. If I had to suggest to be a good to anyone to be a good friend, you have to be out there. You have to be there and visible and not just do all the talking, but also be a good listener.
Okay, so right now I need you guys to go to that participant guide that I talked about earlier, and I'm going to do something called, there's a worksheet and it should say circle of support on it, if you guys can see what it looks like. Okay, so go ahead and get this worksheet out. And what we're going to do with this is first we're going to do a circle of support for yourself, so your own circle of support. And so in that innermost circle, you're going to see that circle with that little person in there. In that circle, I want you to write the names of the person that you are the closest to. So that can be like a lot of times it may be your partner, that may be your closest family, your closest friends, kind of those people who they're the first ones to find out about good things in your life and the first people that you call when you need help. I call them kind of like your ride or die people. Awesome. So once you've done that, you're going to get that second circle, that one right here, right? Not with the person in it, but the next biggest one. And then in that one, you're going to list just other friends and family members. Those are people who support you. They're not necessarily your closest supporters, but they are people who do support you in your life, and they are people who are there for you. And maybe you talk to them a couple times a month, you catch up with them a couple times a month. Not those closest people, but once again, those people that you chat with and they're your friends. And that can even include relatives. Even people of your own immediate family may go into that circle. We don't always, our immediate family doesn't always go into that first circle. Sometimes they do go into that second circle. Okay, and then in that third circle, that's the one that's gray, you're gonna go ahead and list the people that go to the same school as you, that work at the same place of employment. Maybe you guys go to the same place of worship, you guys hang out. Those are kind of the people I call like your acquaintances. Those are the people that you're friendly with, you say hi with, but they're not necessarily people that you call on a lot for support, but they are in your network, kind of float around that outer edge of your network. Awesome. And then in that fourth circle, that larger circle, I want you to write down people in your network who are paid to be there. So that may look like your hairdresser, your therapist, your doctor. It can even look like if you have children, maybe your children's babysitter or nanny or daycare center. It may look like the person who does your nails or the person who mows your lawn. One time I was giving a presentation in a smaller town, and there were some farmers there, and so we had to talk about, well, maybe those are the people who help you out in the field or whatever that may look like in your own life. Sometimes this one can be a bit more challenging, but I promise if you think about it, there is at least someone in your life that you do pay to be there for you. Awesome. So now we're going to do the same exercise, but we're going to do it for our family member who has a disability. So once again, in that first circle where the little person is, I want you to write down the people that your family member is the closest to. Be the closest friends or the closest family members. And then in that second circle, we're going to write down other friends and family members, people that your family member with a disability is close to, but that they, you know, like that innermost circle of people. And then in that third circle, again, you're going to go ahead and put down people that go to the same school, that go to the same workshop, same day hab, same clubs, place of worship, different activities that your family member does. So once again, kind of those more like acquaintance people, and you can even just write down like the name. If you want to write down like the name of your like place of worship or the name of, you know, if they're on some type of sporting team, you can also just write down just the name of that team or the name of their day hab or school or place of employment, whatever that may look like for them. And then once again, in that larger circle right there, we're going to go ahead and list the people that are paid to be in your family member's life. That may be therapists, think physical, speech, occupational, behavioral. That may be caregivers, doctors, nurses, other paid support staff. Once again, even their hairdresser may be in there, whoever, you know, the person who adjust their wheelchair, other mobility devices, whatever that looks like for your family member. Okay, and then once you're done with that, I want you to take a look at both your circle of support and your family members with the disability circle of support. I just want you to take a second and just kind of look at those and compare those two. And maybe jot down any observations that just immediately come to mind when you look at those. A lot of times when I do this workshop in person and I ask people to raise their hands and share those observations with me, I hear a couple of different things. Sometimes I hear that a lot of times that both the relative with a disability and the person who is there, you know, the relative who's doing it, they say like, oh, like my relative with a disability and my circle of support, those first two circles look very similar. They share a lot of the same support network. Another time I had someone comment like, oh, my brother has a lot more friends than I do, I think because we make a really big effort to make sure that he is being included. Sometimes I hear people, a lot of times what we hear people saying is that that outermost circle, that paid circle for their loved one with a disability is much larger than their own. And that a lot of times those three more innermost circles are kind of a bit more sparse. And so the reason why we have you guys do this exercise and the reason why it's important is because moving forward throughout this training, I'm going to refer back to this circle of support. And I think it's pretty important, number one, for yourself to know what your own circle of support is, because being a caregiver is tough. We need to be able to have our own people who support us, who hopefully aren't also supporting our loved one with a disability. We need to be able to have friends and family and other people we can go to and that we can get support from, because we acknowledge that having a family with a disability, it can be challenging. There's definitely joys that come out of it, but it is a challenge, and it can take a toll on a person, and it can take a toll on a family and their support network. So first off, we really want to encourage you guys to take care of yourself first and foremost. But also when we look into that circle of support for our family member with a disability, sometimes we can see where those gaps are. Because a lot of times we know that paid support staff, although they are wonderful and may truly love and care for our loved one with a disability, we also know that those paid relationships tend to be a bit more flaky, in the sense that my brother has had some wonderful caregivers, and some of them still come and visit him, and they're great. But ultimately, most of his caregivers have moved on. He's been through dozens in his lifetime, and they're wonderful people, and they've been a great support to my family um, when we've been in it and when we've needed it. Um, so we definitely love his caregivers, but we know that it's not a stable relationship. Those aren't the people who are going to be with him lifelong. It's those first two circles that are going to be with him lifelong. And a lot of times too, I think we're quick to turn to finding more paid staff to fill a need in our family member's life. For example, when I was preparing for this training, I read a story about a mom and her son was a really loved to read. He read dozens of books each week, and he wanted to go to the library, but the mom only had time in her week to really take him to the library once a week. And her son wanted to go 2 to 3 times a week to get new books. And so she could have, right, put an ad on care.com, found a caregiver to take him to the library, paid someone to do that. However, she looked into her own support network, and she remembered that she had a friend who really loved to go to the library. And so she called her friend up and just kind of said, hey, like, would you mind when you're going to the library calling us up and seeing if my son would like to come? And her friend was more than happy to help out. And so now her friend takes her son to the library a couple times a week, and he's really formed a bond outside of his mom with his mom's friend, because they get to talk about the latest books that they're reading. And his mom's friend has even really encouraged him to get involved with some different book clubs and stuff, and to really work on expanding his own support network. We do acknowledge that support networks, it is hard to expand them. It's hard to expand our own support network, and it's hard to expand our loved one with a disability support network. In our resource guide, I have a link to Texas Parent to Parent, and they really do some great work around how to expand our loved one's social support network. So I encourage you guys to take a look at that if while you did this exercise, you really came to realize that your family member's support network could probably use some boostering. I think most of our family member support networks could potentially use some help, and definitely some work on targeting and identifying where we can pull up more people into that support network. So the next thing I kind of want to touch on that goes kind of hand in hand with this building relationships is identifying strengths of our family member with a disability. So as a social worker, we have a philosophy called strengths-based perspective, in which we believe that everybody has strengths, and that those strengths, if we can work with someone on their strengths, it really works well. It really works to strengthen the individual and to help everyone out. And so I think a lot of times when we're talking about people with disabilities, we tend to focus on what they can't do, and what they aren't good at, and what they need, instead of really focusing on their strengths and talking about what are they good at, what things are they already doing. So kind of looking into that third circle, that one where we talked about different acquaintances, and I even told you could write down like just different places that your loved one is already involved in. And so a lot of times that third circle, that's a lot of our social roles. And so that's different. We definitely choose those roles and they play into our strengths. So if you look in your own support, your circle of support, and look in that third circle, you may see that you put down, like, for example, your place of worship. And maybe within your place of worship, you hold some type of leadership role in that. Maybe you're an elder of some sort in your church or synagogue, and that really kind of plays to some different strengths that you have. Maybe you're really great at organizing people and you're really great at communicating, and so you hold that role within your community. And we know that when we're in those roles, that we do build up our own support networks. And so when we're looking at that third circle, a lot of times there are people in our loved one with a disability's life who already can help be a support of them, but how can we get them more involved? And how can we get them more secure in their own social roles and playing on their strengths and preferences? And the story that I always share about this is about my brother Stephen and one of his best friends, Alex. And so Stephen and Alex attend the same church. They have the same place of worship, and and Alex has been going there since she was a baby, and Stephen has been going there for several years now. And both of their families attend this church. But they were never really involved with the community. They kind of went, they sat, they might talk to some of their parents' friends, and then they would leave. And so my older sister kind of saw this and decided, like, I think there's ways that we can help get both of them more involved in the community. And so one thing that they started doing, and it was a very simple thing, was they started taking up the communion gifts. And so once a month, they would bring up the gifts and give them to the priest. And that was a really simple thing that they did, but it gave them a role in their community. And Alex and Stephen looked forward to this all week long. Alex would. They go to the same after school program, and Alex would be like, "Hey, Stephen, it's our week. We're going to take the gifts up," and she especially really embraced that role. And it was, like I said, something really small, and it has given them a role within their community. And I watched it kind of expand their own social network, because now people kind of have something to come up and talk to them about. They'll come up and say, like, "Oh, it's how you bring up the gifts," and then it kind of gives them a jumping off conversation. And so it strengthened their place in the community. It strengthened their relationships among other community members. And it has strengthened, just in general, their quality of life, and they have this role. So I think a lot of times there can be really simple shifts that we can take. We don't need to necessarily go out and create a brand new support network for a family member. We need to kind of look at what are their strengths and preferences. Forget about what they can't do, forget about their diagnosis, and forget about all of that, but let's really think, what are they good at? What do they want to do? Let's really bring their voice to the table and really figure out what's important to them. What do they want? And really think through what social roles and activities do they already participate in? How can we really help strengthen those a little bit more? So this is the end of our first video, and if you would like to continue on with this presentation, please find our second video, part 2, where we'll talk about housing and education.